Hello, everybody. Welcome to tomorrow's headlines today, which just might just be an endangering the grave. It has been a long time since I've talked to you guys about aliens, the mark of the beast, and things to come. But today, I have discovered the Boyd Bushman video that has been out since 2014, which is essentially a deathbed confession from Boyd Bushman, who worked for Lockheed Martin, I believe it was. If you actually look online, you go to the Black Vault or stuff like that, not only can you find his information and verification, who he worked for, but you find FBI files and all sorts of things, records, his Social Security number, everything. They just put it all out there. All of it's out there for everyone to see and verify that he did work for who he said he worked for. His patents are out there that he has, etc. Now, the stuff that I'm going to share with you today is to help break down the disinformation campaign that is coming from the CIA, from the FBI, NSA, all of these different three-letter alphabet acronym agencies, which might get me a good ban here. But we're going to go over it anyway. Now, this video comes up, pops up on the internet, then disappears, and then pops back up, and then disappears. So I am going to share it with you. We're going to pause during the video, and I will discuss the things that are being spoken about and give you the biblical insight as to what's going on, what's actually going on. Because a lot of the things that I've seen in this Boyd Bushman thing, I can understand scientifically, and I can understand biblically. And I want to help you to be prepared, because it's not very far from now. Actually, if you do any research on Theosophical Society, Alice Bailey, etc., all of these people who are New Age occultists, which is basically what the world's about to enter into, it's heavy-duty witchcraft, but it's disguised as New Age. Right, and that's a lot of this is coming from New Age thing. I want to warn you that in this video, you are going to see a demon, a real demon, okay? And you're going to see their bodies or avatars that they use, etc. So, just a heads up. If you would like to partner with us, we greatly appreciate it. FiresideGrace.com/partner with us. That's also to tithe to us and everything else. And we always need it. We need it, especially at the first of the month. We 100% need it at the first of the month, because that's when all of our bills are due. We have a lot going on. So, FiresideGrace.com, or you can always go to Brandy's Venmo, which is Brandy-Cloninger. Cash App is $FiresideGrace, and PayPal is Fireside Grace, and of course our mail is P.O. Box 1285, Judsonia, Arkansas 72081. So, let's roll the intro. What do you think? Endangering the grave? Let's do Endangering the grave? No, let's do it tomorrow's headlines today, because this will be news one day, okay? And you'll be seeing these things in the news, so I want you to be prepared. So let's do that. Okay, so if you don't know, I wrote a book called The Mark of the Beast, from creation to revelation. It's about 200 pages long, so it's not a long read, but it's not a short read. And it's very informative, and it will challenge pretty much everything that you think you know and understand about the Mark of the Beast, the end of days, the Nephilim, the sons of God, etc. I recommend that you get it, not because we sell it, not because I want to make money, which is nice. That's nice, right? But because I want your eyes to be open, and I'm going to share with you a lot of revelation from that in this video today, okay? Now, the video from Boyd Bushman is actually 32 minutes long. Of course, when I pause it and do the breakdown, it's going to take more time than that to get through the whole thing, so hang in there with us. And make sure that you like, subscribe, share with your friends and family, and hit comments. The more you guys comment, the better, because it pushes the algorithms for YouTube, causes it to go out for more people to see, okay? And that will help. And the reason I'm saying this is because I want you to, I want to reach as many people as possible so that you're not deceived, so that no one's deceived, when these creatures start to show up, because it's very soon, right? This is one of the things that Jesus has charged me to do here on earth while I'm alive, however long it is to get the word out about this. And he's shown me a lot of things in the Spirit that really help this. So, without further ado, let's begin the video. I may have to rewind it back just a smidge. We'll hit play.
My name is Bushman. I'm a senior scientist from Lockheed Martin. I have 27 patents. Approximately 13 years ago, I ran across a person who had been given a job by Dr. Teller. Dr. Teller was Oppenheimer's right-hand man, and even after Oppenheimer was thrown out of Area 51, Dr. Teller stayed there and was in charge of several programs. The person that I contact twice to 3 times per month is the head of that program now. And they continually update me on everything they possibly can. I do have a top secret clearance. I choose, however, for their purposes, not to use it because the intelligent ones of me, actually believe that a great deal of information should be lifted up from those dark recesses of Area 51 and moved over so people can see it. So that's what began.
I like how he has his direct TV remote control right there. So, typical man, he's like, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to have control. It's almost like it's signaling to us that he's in control. But also, it's a man status thing. My kids always have the remote control, by the way.
About 13 years ago, since I am a scientist, I do not believe in theory. I basically say, follow the data, theory be damned. If something can't verify by a physical test that something is true, then I do not care to accept it in that I present. Therefore,
which is very unfortunate because that means you might not be in heaven.
Will be data that comes directly from them through me to you. The subject of today there are those that are acquainted with the fact that there were Phoenix lights that occurred over Phoenix about 2 years ago. They were photographed, and those really turned out to be just blobs across the Phoenix sky. It turned out to be that a very dear friend of mine took his wife up a mountain on Valentine's Day, and they took a photograph of Tucson. Turned out to be, when they developed the film, there were a total of 5 UFOs across Tucson proper. And this is Tucson as they saw it. Can you get that? So here's the picture of Tucson as he had it. Then, as he developed further, notice that there are 5 very distinct UFOs along the top of the mountain.
Okay, now you can see those here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that looks like a 6th one right there to me, so it doesn't look like it's just 5 but 6. But just so you can see them, they look like stars across the mountaintop.
Mm-hmm. One of them is even canted a bit, about 45 degrees. Now, the person that took the film said that he had a mothership underneath and one up high. This shows the high one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I know that I can buy the ship.
My name is Scott Faree. I live in Vail, Arizona. A friend of mine who manages a nonprofit in Tucson asked me to take some photos for him for his website. And he was looking for a sunrise picture of kind of the skyline of downtown Tucson. So I had gone out actually on Valentine's Day evening. I dragged my wife up to A Mountain so that I could go up there and just block out some shots, kind of plan the photos that I was ultimately going to take for that website. And so we got up on A Mountain just as the sun was setting. I set up my Canon 40D on a tripod, opened the shutter up fully. I really wasn't looking for picture quality. I was, like I said, I was looking to block out where I wanted to set the camera and the angles that I wanted to take. And so I started to click off some photos, and I had these set with a timer release on the shutter so I didn't get any camera vibration because the sun was starting to set. We were running into fairly low light. And I took, I don't know, it was probably 6 or 8 pictures. I figured I'd had enough that I could take a look at tomorrow, or take a look at the next day and decide what I liked. So we went out to dinner that night, went home the following day. I uploaded these photos onto my laptop, and I noticed some lights that I really didn't expect to see up above the Santa Catalina Mountains. And upon closer inspection, and as I really ran out the contrast in the photo, I ended up with something that I still can't explain to this day. This is the original photo, and these lights were showing up just over the top of the mountain. I took a second photo probably 5 or 6 seconds later, as long as it would have taken for me to reset the timer. And in fact, this group of lights was in a much more narrow band, and now about, well, I don't know, I can't really say distance-wise, but they'd moved quite a ways from where that original grouping had taken place. So I still have no explanation for the camera, or for the pictures. These images, these lights have not shown up in any other photos that I've taken. I'm at a loss as to what they might be, and certainly curious as to where those lights came from. They certainly are very similar images.
Here's up and flying. Let me go through, now on the ships, in order for me to believe it, I had to get blow-ups. And so here are 2 of them, which is blown up much higher. And I think I have one that, yeah, you can see the 45-degree candidate UFO. Now see, the only reason that I bought everything that he said is because my people have been feeding me for 13 years pictures, not only pictures of
So this is important and something to pay attention to, and I have, at some point, I will discuss what's going on and why these craft look a certain way they do when they're about to take off, and why they look the way they do when they're in flight, etc.
Just plain pictures. But I gave them assignments, being a senior scientist, and they got a picture of up close and personal. This is a UFO which is ready to take off, and it is very up close. And they informed me that there are 3 elements which the UFO is contained. One is telluride, the other is germanium.
Telluride, huh? You don't think it's a little bit suspicious at all that there's now cars that are called telluride, right? Anyway.
The other is palladium. I did not say a metal once. And not only that, but the things pick up and fly. using anti-gravity. Now, that's one picture. Here's another picture. In this case, the UFO is not turned on, ready to fly. Therefore, it only shows on the upper part of it. And generally, it's white on the underside when power is applied. Here's also another of the same order. Now, these UFOs are 38 feet in diameter, and it was rather surprising to me, since I actually physically gave them my camera. They took this picture as a UFO was departing. Within one flick of my camera, they got 3 UFOs.
There's a purpose for that. There's a reason. Light is capable of being bent and refracted, etc. The speed of light can change. So the whole E equals MC squared idea is slightly flawed, because there has to be variance of E equals MC squared. Because E equals energy, it means energy is equal to mass times constant squared. The constant in that case is supposed to be the speed of light, which is not supposed to change. However, the speed of light can be changed by different variables, such as gravitational force that it hits, and that will cause it to bend, which actually causes the space-time around with that gravitational force, like a black hole, a sun, a large planet, which is why we can see stars that are behind the sun that we shouldn't be able to see normally, but we can see them regardless. And people say, oh, well, that's evidence of a flat Earth. You shouldn't be able to see that star. How does that happen? It's because the light can be pulled around, and you can see it as it's cast around something. Light doesn't have to travel in a linear straight line like you think it does. Light can be bent and can go around. So Isaiah 13:10, very interesting. This ties into this. Isaiah 13:10 says, their constellations will not give off light. So their constellations will go dark. They're always, every time, and this is going to be brought up in here, they talk about we're asking these aliens, quote unquote, or creatures where they came from. They say that they came from some planet that's within some constellation. Typically, it's like Alpha Centauri or Zeta Reticuli or the Cygnus constellation or the constellation of Orion, right? So it's important to take note of that. The Bible says that their constellations will not give out light. Well, in Isaiah 13:5, it says that they will come from the farthest reaches of the heavens, from planets in the farthest reaches of the heavens, etc., from distant lands. The word for distant lands is also the same word for planets, right? And it says their constellations will not give off light, all right? The stars of heaven and their constellations will not give off light. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. This is from Isaiah 10. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not give off their light. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. These ships, the way that they travel is actually by using gravity waves. Gravity, as they found out in maybe 20 years ago, isn't just something that is acquired because of mass and would have particles that are essentially generated or form as the result of something having a large amount of mass, and they call them gravitons. Well, that's not the case. Much like radio waves, light waves, etc., have waves, and they can be caused to go in bigger patterns, wider patterns, or smaller patterns. That's what they control when these ships are flying, all right? So the heavens, the way that they do this is they actually bend space-time. Now, the heavens is actually what we would consider, or what people would consider in physics, or whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, when you're researching this stuff, is space-time. And that can actually be shaken, bent, twisted, moved, fractured, or torn. And even it says that God stretches out the heavens, meaning like the universe. He stretches it out like a curtain, it says, or like a fabric. So he stretches it and pulls it out. So it lets us know that there is actually, though we can't see it, a tangible, visible fabric of space and time that exists. Okay? And space-time is bent by the amount of gravity that something has. That's to break it down into layman's terms, essentially. All right, so planets rest on space-time, and a planet can be shaken. The point in which planets are seated can be shaken and almost kind of bounced loose, so to speak, like a ping pong ball in a sheet. Now, to put it more technically, space and time can be shaken due to the existence of gravitational waves. Einstein's theory of relativity states that space and time are flexible and can be warped by mass. Not just mass. The warp creates gravity, which redirects the path of objects that travel through it. Gravitational waves are vibrations in space-time that carry the sounds of the universe. These vibrations are caused by the motion of matter and are most powerful when the densest objects accelerate the fastest. So, something to think about there. Scientists have detected gravitational waves, which are ripples in the structure of space and time. The discovery of gravitational waves is a significant development in astronomy and may lead to new insights into the evolution, I hate that word, of galaxies, etc. Now, the effects of gravitational waves are that the gravitational pull of massive objects, such as black holes, cause space and time to bend and shake. This can cause the distances between objects to shift, even though the changes are tiny and minute. You can travel in between those waves, or you can travel on those waves. And guess what? They're faster than light. And you can make it go faster and faster and faster. All right? This is why when people look at UFOs or UAPs, it's always blurry. It's because they're creating a massive amount of gravity, which, like in the picture that Dr. Bushman is holding up here, you see 3 UFOs captured in a single frame. It's not that 3 UFOs suddenly appeared. It's because the light is moving so fast and bending around and refracting, etc., that you're seeing it appear 3 ways. It's almost like a mirage, okay? So, one thing that I'd like to point out is that it says that the Earth will be removed from its course in Isaiah 13 as well, and that it will break loose from its course, and it will be. God says He will shake the heavens, and the earth will be busted loose. Let me bring that out for you. Isaiah 13. I'll pull it up right here. Isaiah 13:13. He says, "Therefore, I will shake the heavens, and the earth will move out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts and in the day of his fierce anger." Okay? So what we have here is scientists have recently discovered that planets and other things, etc., can be literally space and time can be shaken. And God's saying here, in the end of days, that's what he'll do, so much to the extent that the planet goes off of its course, that we don't get light from the sun anymore, and that the moon doesn't have light anymore. And it also says that in that time, the constellations will not give their light. So, something's going on at that time where they're messing with time and space so much that it actually alters everything, and God's already prophesied this to us. But anyway, continuing on here.
That's real. And yeah, we don't know why either. Now also, when UFOs come in, they like we have a heads-up display for our pilots. They do too. This is what their pilots see in order to tell them how to come to Area 51 and land. And not only that, they can go to a vertical hole in a mountain over 51 and go down a shaft. They don't have wheels. They don't have anything like that. They take off by going up straight, and then not only that, but they travel extremely rapidly. Their home planet is Quintonia, which is 68 light years from us.
So one thing I want to point out is Quintonium is actually a relatively new name for a planet. So this is part of the thing that you would... I mean, that planet wasn't even discovered until the 2000s. So this is one thing it's called like Helper 186F or something like that. Helperin 186F or something like that. This is a technical name for it. Quintonium is a person whose name was like Quintoa or something like that. It was a female scientist. And she first discovered it, so they named the planet after her. So for them to say I come from Quintonium, that would be, to me, definitely a big red flag that it's disinformation. And of course, these things that are inside the bodies of these creatures that they recover are demonic spirits, especially in these little ones, the little grays they call them. They're wearing Kevlar suits and heads-up display and stuff. They're essentially pilots, kind of like we have. That are doing these things. They're demonic spirits that are interred in those bodies, and we're going to cover that more towards the end of this. But Quintonium is approximately 68 light years away, and of course it's in the Swan constellation, as we would call it. So they always say they're from one of these constellations. Just want to point that out.
They, to my surprise, when I asked them how fast they take to get from that, it should be 68,000 years to make it according to Einstein. But they're able to make it to us in 45 years. So I gave them
That says, if you can read it, he meant to say 45 minutes, not 45 years. So they can get 68 light years, which is the speed... It's how far light can travel in 68 years. So a light year is how far light can travel in 1 year at the speed of light. So if they... And the reason is because it bends time and space.
Assignment to photograph the planets from space as they were coming back. And they did that. And you see Jupiter and Saturn and Mars and Earth as it's seen by UFOs. And here's another. Now, we aren't going through motherships or anything like that. Nevertheless, those are the UFOs. Now, when they actually get powered up and actually start
Okay, so all of a sudden, on this crystal clear sky, blue sky day, my internet's going in and out. But this works out. Like I said previously when I was explaining this, Lord, would you please protect this signal so that we will have the best possible signal, period, in Jesus' name. Like I said before, the reason that they look like that, the reason that you notice that they're always getting these blurry pictures when they take pictures of these UFOs is not because their camera quality is so terrible or they're moving so fast necessarily, because you can have, we have slow motion cameras, and they have some of these slow motion cameras on some of the aircraft that they fly, that we can slow things down to like 180,000 frames per second. So we can catch something like that. The reason that it's like this is because it's distorting the light around it because of the gravity. It's actually bending time and space around it so that it looks blurry like this. And it's because our eyes can't see that. But if you actually turned your head to the side and were looking at it with your peripheral vision, you'd be able to see it better because of the way that your eyes are shaped. These are things that I know from being in the Spirit, from praying in tongues, and from the Lord showing me, and some things that I found in the Bible. So I'm just sharing this with you, right?
They travel like that, they look like that, and they travel extremely rapidly. Now, The question is who are they? Here's another one that's, you see the bottom, how it's all white? It's turned on. Here's also the bottom turned on. Strangely enough, I asked them to take pictures of the power unit on the bottom, up close and personal. They gave me this. I don't know what this means. That's when my camera actually looks into the power center of the UFO.
Oh, they make small black holes.
I asked them to tell me about who was flying these things. He therefore said, fine, they're approximately 5 feet, 4.5 to 5 feet tall.
I just want to point out that looks like the not dehydrated form of the Kodachrome alien, if you want to go look that up, which was a picture that somebody took of a reflection. They couldn't take a direct picture of the alien, but they took a picture of the alien in a reflection, the Kodachrome alien, and it looks like it was burned and dehydrated, and they took off the mask, which is what, you can see where these things are wearing their masks. It looks like a HUD display. And it also looks very similar to the quote-unquote frozen alien that they found in Russia in 2011 that was missing a limb. And kind of like the creature that guy in Mexico supposedly found, which they deemed was fake. Now, they always come out and say, oh, these pictures are fake. These things are fake. We found this, that. There's mixed DNA in here and all this other stuff. There is mixed DNA, and we're going to get into that more about the revelation as we progress down here when he starts talking about their makeup and stuff. So
they had one or two of them around it that were 230 years old, and we have a total of at least 18 that exist and operate with our facility as Teller set it up. Now notice the eyes are different, nose are different, but they do have 5 fingers, 5 toes, 2 eyes, and rather strangely enough, I asked him how they communicate. He says, well, it's like this, Ward. You all of a sudden have a question in your mind. You walk into a room with one of them, and all of a sudden you find yourself giving the answer to your question in your own voice. They're able to use your own voice by telepathy to talk to you. And I said, fine. Now that's how they look front.
Okay, so that is actually a demon. And I know this because a long time ago, probably 15 years ago or so, Jesus took me on a little trip, and we went into a basement where 5 guys were playing poker. For the life of me, I can't remember what they were talking about when they were playing poker. But I guess, I didn't need to focus on that. And there was a demon there. And I've described this demon to people before. It kind of looked like the demon Jafar from Aladdin when he was turned into a genie, and he had these nasty, sharp, pointy teeth and this disgusting tuft of hair on his head, and his skin was like a black gray, and his feet kind of looked like a cloud, like a smoky oil burning cloud, and he was nasty. Just a nasty-looking, kind of reptilian-looking thing. And he had these yellow, disgusting, nasty teeth. And what he was doing is he was speaking in the voice. These people were around the table, and he went to this first guy. He said something into the guy's ear and saw if the guy was going to receive it, say it, speak it, etc. As soon as this demon spoke it, the person started to speak it. And then I watched as the demon, while that person was talking, went from person to person to person, watching their face, etc., and speaking to them in their voices. So that they thought, and in the first person, so that they thought that they were thinking to themselves. But it was the demon that was controlling and manipulating their thoughts. And they weren't in control of their thoughts. They were all drinking, smoking cigars, playing poker in this basement. Texas Hold'em, I do remember that. And he would watch and see how the people were responding to what he was saying in a moment, so he could form an argument, a disagreement, an agreement, etc., and create an argument, and got all 5 of the guys arguing over this topic and was controlling their thoughts. Now, this is very similar to, and the reason I say that this is demonic is you're going to see a picture of this demon in this video. Very, very clear. You will see it, okay? And we'll discuss their whole theology that they have, this alien theology, which is actually New Age theology. And it's part of the Great Deception that's coming. And they're very clear and pointed about it. It is in their writings, the writings of the Theosophical Society, the externalization of the hierarchy, etc. You can find all of this there. Okay? This is why it's very important to practice controlling what you're thinking about and only focusing on the good things that God tells us to think about. Because if you don't focus on these things, on the good things, then you're going to focus on the bad things. And Paul says, finally, brethren, this is Philippians 4:8, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things, meaning focus on these things. Don't focus on all of the other stuff. Hulkma said they put thoughts in your head making you think that you're thinking it. You can't tell the difference, but only with the Word of God. Yeah, you have to practice hearing the voice of God. You have to practice focusing on the things that are good. You can tell what's their voice and what's not. Now, after a while, you will start to hear, when you recognize that it's their voice, you will start to hear them speaking in their natural voice. You perceive it as your own voice. Their natural voice is usually angry, terrifying, hurtful, deep. They have these booming, when you hear a demon, they have these booming, nasty voices. I don't know how to explain it, but they're horrible. They're always hateful and angry, especially if you resist them. But they're not transferring their thoughts into your thoughts. What they're doing is they're speaking it. You're hearing it and not recognizing it, even if it's just spiritually, transferring it into your carnal man and then thinking that those thoughts are yours, because that's how clearly you can hear in the spirit. And that's what this demon is doing. Okay? And you're going to see that it manifests itself later in this, all right? Now, 2 Corinthians 10, verses 4 through 6 says, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity. Every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ, and being ready to punish all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. So you need to be obedient to God if you want to see God take care of the people that are not being obedient, right? Someone said, do you think meditation is demonic? Meditation in the sense that you're trying to fall asleep and access the spirit realm? Yes. But meditation in the sense that you're speaking the Word of God, focusing on the Word of God, focusing on God in the biblical meditation? No. I think the modern Eastern meditation is demonic, but not Christian meditation. And I'm not talking about sitting and saying your mantras and trying to get into the spirit realm, right? All right, let's continue on in this video.
But when you turn around and look at the back, it's like that. Now notice that they have 3 backbones. They're actually cartilage. Nevertheless, it's a much more efficient system as ours. They also have 3 ribs in their system rather than more. This is also the back side of an alien. Here's a 45-degree look.
That's with the mask off.
And here's the back of the head. Notice the veins and no hair. And now when we talk about aliens, I push the issue And he said, well, there's kind of two groups of aliens. They divided them into two groups. One group he calls, it's like you have a ranch.
ranch.
You have a ranch and you find that one group are your wranglers that know how to wrangle your cattle. Now others are rustlers, ones that steal your cattle.
Not wrestlers.
And indeed, that the two groups do act differently. To the ones that are wranglers are much more friendly and have a better relationship with us. Here,
that's a great spot to pause it there. If you can zoom in on your phone screen, you can get a really good look at their faces. My friend Brian Melvin was in hell. He told me behind the scenes that he saw demons that looked just like these aliens down there. So there's something for you to think about. Also, notice that they have jobs, and it says there are wranglers and rustlers. A rustler is a person who comes and steals. They steal cattle, animals, livestock, etc. Now, what do you think these aliens are stealing here? It's people. Now, the reason is these things are demons in origin, and I can get into that Hokmah about where do I think they come from. They come from Earth. It's part of the deception. They aren't aliens from other planets. They came from right here on this planet. And it's all throughout the Bible. Okay? In the Bible, it says that the women will be turned over to the Antichrist. Well, the Antichrist is a dragon. And not the dragon in the sense we think of a dragon. He's a mix of a man. He has multiple faces or heads. And it says that we hand over our women to him. There's a reason for it, because they need them so that they can take their DNA and use it to reproduce themselves. Okay? And they come out and actually some of them come out and say this, some of these quote-unquote creatures in their interviews, that they need them because they can't reproduce themselves. It also says in Daniel chapter 2, when it's talking about all of these different creatures and how they come, and it uses the word, he calls them essentially serpents, and says that they will cleave unto men, but they will not. What does it say? It uses the word for having carnal relations with humans, but they won't marry. They can't cleave unto them. Okay, so they're not taking people just because they're they're stealing, right? And this guy's saying there's two classes or two classifications essentially: those that take people and steal them, and the others. And in the Bible, it really goes into depth and says that they turn people into slaves, that they trade their souls, and they do all of these things. So let's get back into that, and then
the other side of the alien too. Now also notice that their feet, where they have 5 toes, the toes are joined together like a frog, and yet they are dissimilar. Now there was a surprising occurrence, and that is my friend had one of them that
I'll pause it before we get to this part. This is where you're about to see a demon manifested. A ghost. It's not a ghost. All right, so one thing I want to point out here. They have feet like frogs. Okay? Not a coincidence. In Revelation, Revelation chapter 16, verses 13 through 14, it says, "And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet." Right? "For they are spirits of demons, performing signs, which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to battle on the great day of the Almighty." Now, these aliens that we are seeing are actually genetically modified creatures, and we see this all throughout the Bible. So we take a look at Genesis chapter 11. I'm going to go to verse 10 because it's going to be closer to what I'm looking for, and then I can go from there. All right, let's go into the New King James Version. All right, the whole earth had one language and one speech. It came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." Okay, so the bricks that they were making, the word for bricks here comes from the word Laban, which means white. So they were making white bricks. Now, this was in the time of Egypt and Mizraim. Okay, and there's actually proof, evidence out there, and we can do this, where they can actually make those big square bricks in place that weigh 200 tons in the matter of 3 days and stack them on top of each other and just keep making them. They make them out of this recipe that they found from the ancient Egyptians from 4,000 years ago or something like that they discovered. Right? So they were making white bricks. And they said, "Let us bake them thoroughly." So they baked them. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. Well, I did some research on what was used to seal the pyramids, and it was bitumen or asphalt, as it says here in this translation, so that it would be waterproof. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens." This part right here actually says, let's build a city whose head or team and captain, that word for Rosh right there is Varoshna, and it means a team, captain, crew, or command of people who is in the heavens, in the Shemayim. So they're building this city whose top is in the heavens, and we just think, oh, they're building these big, tall buildings that reach up into the sky. But actually, what it says is they're building this city, and they're sending men into space. Then they said, "Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we should be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." Well, what sense does that make? Let us make a name for ourselves, right? Well, the word they use here is they say, let's make a Shem for ourselves, right? The tower is the Migdal, which is a watchtower, and its top is Valroshov in the heavens. That is 7218 comes from the word Rosh, but when you get down into the Strong's Concordance, it says a band, captain, or company of people. So going back here, the word for Vamigdala, Umigdal, or Vamigdal is talking actually about a pyramidal-shaped tower, and then Bashemayim, so that's going into the heavens, and then it says Va-neasa la nushem. So they're saying, let's make for us, or for ourselves, a name. Well, the word Shem, as we find out, doesn't just mean the name. It also means a mark, or it can mean renown. So the mark of the renown, when it says the Giborim in Genesis 6, were the men of renown, that means they had their own Shem, their own image, or name, or renown, okay? It's a conspicuous position, appellation, as a mark, memorial, individuality, character, or etc. Okay, it's where we get the word Shemayim, which means the glory water, so the water of glory from God. Okay, so what we find out is when they have the mark of the beast, the mark of the image or the name, we actually find out that the word onoma actually means mark, memorial, or renown, etc. Okay, so when they were making their own image, what they were making a name for themselves is they were making their own image. They were making themselves in their own image. And at that time, they had begun traveling through space. Well, you say, well, I don't know. I have to see that in something a little more clear here. So we're going to go to Revelation. We're going to go to chapter 12, and I'll start at verse 7 because it's easier for me to just go through there. And let's see. I just have to say, I think what I'm looking for is actually like verse 12 or 13. You just got to find it here. The dragon saw that he'd been cast to earth, and he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child, which is Jesus Christ. But the woman was given 2 wings of great eagle that she might fly into the wilderness to her place where she's nourished for a time and a half, from the presence of the serpent. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood to the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away to the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood of the dragon that he spewed out. So verse 17 is the one we're looking for. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. So this is us, Christians. The dragon is trying to persecute us. So if you think we're going to be gone before the Antichrist shows up, you're wrong. But let's take a look at this. We're going to look at it in Greek. And it says, kai orgeste ho drakon, okay? So the dragon was angry. It's the word drakon. Epitegeinikai, with the woman. Epelethen poise polimen meta ton loipan tu spermatos, okay? So what it says here is, the dragon was angry with the woman, with women, okay? And went to make war with. The word war here is, the word for with here is meta. Now, that word means, we can translate it as meaning with, but it actually means to be changed or transformed. And it means afterwards, according to Strong's, to be afterwards or to be changed or altered. Now, the Greek understanding of the word is meta, which is a preposition, which means after with, implying that there was a change afterwards. So, something happened, and there was a change after, okay? And what is being changed? So it says here, if we look at it, that he went to war to change the rest of the spermatos. The word for spermatos is translated as children. It literally means the seed. Spermatos. In Hebrew, it will be zerah. The seed. The dragon wanted to alter or change the seed because he was mad with the women. So he wanted to alter or change us. So that's part of the mark of the beast. When you receive the mark or the chargama, the mark, it's not just speaking of you're getting a tattoo or an imprint or something like that. You are taking on his image. You are being altered, transformed, and changed. And so he tries to change the church, tries to change the body of Christ. And it says that he's angry at the woman, which is the church, and he tries to take out the rest of her children, which means there are Christians that actually will be changed and will receive the mark, if you would even consider them Christians. But he goes specifically after the ones that are keeping the commandments of God and holding the testimony of Jesus. And then it says, and he stood upon the sand of the sea. So, where do these creatures come from? That's just a couple of different things for us. If you look at the different creatures throughout the Bible, and again, this is all in my book, The Mark for the Beast from Creation to Revelation. But if you look at the names of the Rephaim, or the Rephaim, the Gibborim, etc., you find out that they all have names that are typically animalistic characters in nature, like the Hazuzim. And it actually describes, the Hazuzim means the goat people, and it actually describes in Daniel, I believe it's chapter 7, the dragon in Aramaic, I believe, as a Hazuzim. Okay? It calls it a Hazuzim. That's the goat. And then when it says the goat, it says that the goat actually had two heads and was male and female. Then in a different verse in the Bible, it says that the Antichrist is a man of fierce features. Well, that word for fierce features in Hebrew literally means multiple faces or multiple heads. Then in the book of Revelation, it says that the Antichrist has one of its heads wounded. One of its heads. People always say, oh, well, that must be a head of the government or something like that, or part of the system. No, the Antichrist actually has two heads and doesn't look anything like what you think is going to look like. All right, moving along here.
That was a friend, and he died here.
Yeah. One thing that I would also like to point out. All right, so many years ago, there was a leak on the internet, someone who wouldn't identify themselves, but was an accredited biologist, was what they would say. And if you check out the story, it really checks out and makes a lot of sense and etc. But they were assigned to do research on some of these cadavers that they had, and they found out that these cadavers are essentially all clones. He said their DNA was so precise, concise, and perfect, and the patterns were repeated over and over again in such a way, identically, that he could tell that these creatures were created clones, basically cut and paste DNA, and were not organic. They weren't natural. They were made. So these bodysuits of these Greys, and of course these are the ones from Area 51 that Boyd Bushman is talking about right now, their suits are made. And they call humans containers because they want to get into humans. Well, in this research that I did, one of the aliens said to them that their spirits exist after they die. They remain on the earth for a while. They become part of a collective consciousness where we all experience each other's lives. Slightly true, because in hell, you do experience other people's lives, but it's the people that you hurt and sinned against. And you feel what they felt and what they went through when you hurt them and sinned against them, etc. And then you have to pay for the consequence for that as well. But he said that these things are too exact and too perfect to be natural or organic, that they are clones. And he also said that the DNA had human DNA, reptilian DNA, as in like lizards, frogs, etc., and bees. And all of the DNA, except for one strand of DNA, was known DNA from different biomes or ecosystems or whatever, however you want to say about aliens or about creatures on this planet. But all of that DNA was known DNA from here on Earth. And their excuse for that was that, oh, well, when consciousness creates, it creates DNA similarly. No, it's because they genetically altered themselves using the DNA from creatures here on this planet and are trying to deceive you and tell you that consciousness did this. No, they did it. Okay, so let's continue on here.
And 10 days after his death, I was out visiting my buddy who's in this.
He's talking about 10 days after the death of the quote-unquote alien, and if you look, you see the man with the cowboy hat in the back, and that's the spirit of the demon that was inside of that quote-unquote alien that remained. So they took a picture of it.
Picture. And if you look very close, you can see that his friend is in spirit form and right over his left shoulder. You can also see that the fingers are long, that there is something. We have an expression that basically say when a person dies, they stay around their body for 3 days and then go off, and they basically have the same thing that happens to them. Now, with respect to the alien craft, we have American citizens which are suited up like this, and they are working on UFOs 24 hours a day, and we're trying to learn what to do. These are two guys, two American citizens, and they're trying to protect themselves against germs and things like that. And
another thing to point out here is that if these creatures were actually from different planets, they wouldn't be affected by our germs and etc., because our germs wouldn't be able to touch them because they wouldn't have the same genetic structure as us. But since they're clones of all of these different things that are here on Earth, they can get sick.
Here's another view of them. And here's another one. There's an upper part of a UFO and a lower part of a UFO. This is the upper part, and it's just one of them up there. They have, generally we give them suspenders so that if they start floating they don't have gravity on the inside. Somebody can grab them and pull them over to the side. And this is the home planet that they come from, which they call Quintonia.
I just want to point out that that picture of that planet, though it's, somewhat blurred, when he recorded this was before they even announced that they had found a planet, Quintonium or Halpern 186F or whatever it's called. So he had that before that. It's kind of like Bob Lazar, who was talking about element U-115 or whatever it was, before it even existed in the 1980s and 90s, and talking about how they had already discovered that gravity was a wave, not that it was a massive amounts of graviton collected in one space due to mass. Okay, so this is just kind of stuff that all collaborates what is being said here.
Now notice that the hand, that's an alien hand. Notice that that the fingers are longer than ours by quite a bit, about 30% longer, and that's just the way they're put together.
L.A. Marzulli, when he discovered the skeletons with the elongated skulls in Caracas, Peru, or however it's a Paracas, Peru, or whatever it is, discovered that their digits were 33% longer and their eyes specifically were 33% larger. You see? Is it a coincidence that they all have at some point a 33% margin for the different proportions of their body?
No. At any rate, this process that introduced me directly or indirectly to Dr. Teller's work with the group that still is in charge of Area 51 and equivalent, turned out to be a doctor, very, very fine gentleman. And I was carrying on a conversation with him. He saw how the subject was going, so he simply said, well, you need to know what I did one day. And I said, okay. He said, I was in the process of doctoring a pilot who was a test pilot, a Navy test pilot for the United States government. And it was 1947. Said he began, I don't know if it's a drug I had him on or what was occurring, but he basically told me that the radar group, had found a blip out over New Mexico, and that they would like to assign me to go out and check it out. So he said, fine, I'll do that. And he got the fastest airplane that existed then, which was propeller at the time. And it was fully armed and all the rest of those things. Nevertheless, he was out flying and he found the item, and he immediately communicated back, and he said, I wish authority, first of all, I want you to tell me, are there any other airplanes flying? Are there commercial or anything else around other than he and I? Said, just the two of you. And he said, fine. Second thing I want to know is, do I have authority to shoot it down? I said, why do you want authority to shoot it down? He says, because I am flying the fastest thing that the United States can make, and he's beginning to leave me. Therefore, I know he's either a friend or an enemy, and if he's leaving me, he's an enemy. And therefore, I wish authority to shoot it down. The commander said, fine. He granted him authority. He pulled in. He shot him down. It came down. He flew past and saw that there was a road on the one side of the fence area. He came down and landed his airplane. Hard to do, but he did it. And then he cut across the fence. One of them,
Go out again. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Like I said, you start sharing this stuff, and all of a sudden, the internet starts going out. Weirdest thing ever, right? Lord, please protect the rest of this so that people can see this, and it's not cut or distorted in any way, shape, or form. Amen.
So he went over, and rather strangely enough, when he ducked down, because they were only 5 feet high, he saw that he could see through the walls. Not only that, but as he stepped in, the floor was spongy. He looked at the 3 that were there, and they were dead. He knew they were. He'd killed them. But he also knew that the military would come, and he'd put up with those guys for a long time. So he went over, went back across the barbed wire fence, got in his airplane, and took off. Therefore, he was never briefed out at all. And he didn't give my friend authority to allow me to know what his name was. I know, but I won't reveal it. Both of them should have been gone for a long time. Nevertheless, so when I got up with my contacts in Area 51, I brought up that story, and they said, well, that's totally true, but we can't say it, you can. And that's how they've kept me all this time, is I can talk about it, but they can't. I do, because of some very good reasons, keep things within control, but I don't want us to fall behind the Russians and Chinese. And the problem I have is that Area 51 is working with both the Russians and Chinese right now. And trying to make UFOs, they have, there's been a total of 39 United States citizens that have lost their lives trying to reverse engineer UFOs. And the last one I heard of was a year and a half ago, where we lost 19 lives in one test. They actually wanted to bring various flying craft near the UFO, and the UFO defended itself, and 19 of our people died. Now, they kept giving me things rather than they would give me pieces.
So the idea that these things are your peaceful space brothers that are here to help humanity, that they should be weaponless or etc., or they're so concerned about our nuclear weapons, etc., is a farce. Because they tried to bring our people up next to one of them, probably not just to get next to it. I'm sure it was probably trying to see if they could shoot it down or capture it or something like that. And it killed all of them. One thing I want to point out was that would be about 4 or 5 American crafts, because they have repeatedly said that the size of these things, they can only carry about 3 to 4 people at one time piloting these ships. So that would mean about 4 or 5 or so ships were shot down. And this is our most advanced technology. These are ships that we can use to travel across the universe right now, but they don't want to share that information. So they're your peaceful space brothers is a farce.
Of UFOs, and I would come to my laboratories. I had the laboratories of Lockheed and every place else. So I would do that, but I would get pieces of UFOs. For example, I have 3 little pieces of UFOs down underneath the thing that looks like a quartz crystal. Notice that that is my hand, and it is giving weight. It says that it weighs 100 grams. Now, without those 3 items, when I take the UFO material away, notice that the 3 UFO items are gone. But also notice that the weight of the crystal is now 650 grams. The implication here is that if I were to take the pieces of UFO and put them underneath an average man's scale, he would weigh 45 pounds. Basically, they're working in anti-gravity, and therefore our effort is anti-gravity. And not only that, but we take these same pieces of items, and I go to a standard voltmeter, and notice that in my voltmeter I am getting a total voltage of 249 volts out of one piece of UFO. Not only that, but the team took a piece of UFO and connected it up like this and was able to have a complete laboratory operate for 6 months with heavy equipment. And it goes all the way up to 12 amperes. And since you didn't really get this before, here's the foot with the toes joined together. And this is a better view of the same.
Disgusting looking.
Now notice also,
feet are so gross.
This is the body of an alien, and where we have 6 ribs that are connected together, they have 3. And the total height is less than 5 feet. And they still look like this, not like you and I. Nevertheless,
they're all genetically modified and genetically engineered, and if you missed it, it is about halfway through this video, so you can go back and watch that. But all of these things don't look the same. They come looking like different things. They will have different characteristics. There will be some that look more human and are very tall. There will be there's just like in the movies, there's all these different aliens in all these different movies. Some of them have similar characteristics and traits and stuff. It's because they are genetically modifying themselves. And you're going to find out that when they come, that their DNA is Earth DNA. And they're going to try and tell you, oh, it's how consciousness creates. And they're going to come with a fake Jesus also. Just a heads up. The false prophet is a fake Jesus.
So we're able to obtain voltages and anti-gravity. And anti-gravity appears several ways, which is rather unique and nice. Scotty talked about UFOs. I basically said, yeah, I understand, because here is what Area 51 was giving to me since the year 2000 and beyond. Notice it's recent. And
I'm just going to pause it for a second so that you can look and just take a look at the pictures and see what they look like. Notice that some of them look like a sun, but they all have similar shapes and structures. And we see these. Look, there's one that looks like a pyramid. They're triangle. There's round ones. There's some that look like eggs. You've seen all of these at some point, right? If you look over here on I think it's the right or left side of the screen. For me, it's the right side of the screen. You can see the Tic Tacs that recently they showed, that were recently released in certain videos and stuff from Jeremy Corbell, etc. But all this stuff, all this technology, they had this technology before. It's in the hieroglyphs from Seti's tomb from 1,000 years after the fall of Nimrod. It's all there. You have the Vedas and the Vimana vehicles that are in the Vedas, which give you the blueprints of how to make a mercury ion motor that is powerful enough to lift something. And this person in 1886 used the blueprints of the Vimana and made a ship, which they have pictures of, that flew in the sky for, I think it was 150 feet high or something like that, or maybe it was higher, for several miles using this mercury ion motor from the Vimana. So this is stuff that they've known how to do for years.
We have one triangle, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have one that's 150 feet across, if not larger. And each one of these and taken across the world from the year 2004. Now, when you actually get what that all means, is the UFO, when it's white on the underneath side, is ready to fly like that. And it's anti-gravity. That's the reason you don't hear anything.
Have you noticed that it looks oddly similar to the blueprints? Number one, the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works blueprints that were exposed, and also what Bob Lazar drew up that he was working on at S4.
But when it's just parked means just floating in air. It could be above your house, like this, and this. This turns out to be the heads-up display that the aliens see. I'm
going to pause it for you and take my picture off the screen so that you can see that. Hopefully you can see it. I wish there was a way I could zoom in for you, but...
how to go to Area 51 and store their craft. Nevertheless, this is what the craft looked like. That's how they change power. And notice that here's an egg-like thing, but it's standing on end only because it has no gravity itself. And that is a piece of UFO germanium. And this little dot is a piece of neodymium magnet, which is above the germanium, and it's floating all by itself.
You want to get some of that? You can go onto Amazon and look up floating light bulb. You can get that. You can also get germanium and neodymium. I'm not sure about telluride or palladium, but you can get most of that online, and you can create your own anti-gravity levitational devices. He said this is an alien germanium, which means that it's either an isotope, which is not found here on Earth, or they've somehow managed to figure out how to stabilize an isotope that was more that had more piezoelectric properties and the ability to generate its own electricity. And so they would be two opposing poles, and it's going to create a projection force over top of the magnet that kind of pulls it up in one place and pulls it the way that it works. Anyway, I won't even get into that. Let's just stop.
And that again is a UFO, and we don't know why, but the crystal appears to be colored rose, and we can't figure out why yet. There's a whole batch of analysis that we're having to do. Alien, side view, front view, top view, line. And that's the power center of palladium in the middle of the craft. In case I missed anything.
Okay, that is the extent of that. So I hope that it has been revelatory for you. It might get taken off of YouTube. It might not get taken off of YouTube. What I just shared with you has been removed from the internet multiple times. Kevin Zadai talks about this and says to watch this video, and there's a reason you should watch it. There's a reason that he's giving you that information, so that you can see and understand and know what's going on and what's happening, because it all sounds like conspiracy until you have people like me or Kevin or whoever who get into the Bible and find it in the Bible. Now, if you can find it in the Bible, it's no longer conspiracy, because God doesn't lie. And all this stuff is in the Bible. I recommend go to Amazon, look up The Mark of the Beast from Creation to Revelation by Robin and Brandon Cunningham, and buy it. I say Amazon because it's going to be quicker for you to get it from Amazon than it is for you to get it from me, and it actually costs us to send to you. We don't make money off of the book. We sold, I don't know how many books we sold. There was a significant amount of books off of Amazon, and we made the most we've ever made in 3 months off selling these books. Is we get about 20-something% of what's sold. So we made $63 whole. So it's not about the money. It's about the truth, getting you the truth. If you can't afford it, let me know. I will send you a PDF version of it. Just know that it is copyrighted and it has been submitted to the Congressional Library or whatever it is also. So if you try and steal it, you don't have to steal it. I'll give it to you. I give you permission to use it so long as you ask us first, so I can see the context in which you're using it in. And most likely I will give you permission to use it. Okay? I love you guys. Be blessed, and watch this from the beginning, because it's going to change your perception of what's really going on in the world around you. All right? Remember to like and subscribe, partner with us, share this with your friends and family, donate, contribute, whatever. We need it. We always need it. We have a lot going on. We're helping a lot of people, things that we won't even share with you that we do behind the scenes. All right. Love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow for tomorrow's headlines today. Until next time, bye.